So recently I got a comment on one of my posts asking me how to figure out how many calories you're burning, since a lot of the methods out there, like the watches and the Fitbits and all this stuff, are demonstrably not that accurate according to science or whatever else. Energy expenditure is one of the parts of the equation to figuring out how to be in a calorie deficit so that you can lose weight. Because with the whole calorie deficit thing, you need to eat less than you're burning in order to create that deficit, so your body uses up fat storage as energy, resulting in fat loss and weight loss. And if this whole thing where you're trying to figure out how much you're burning isn't accurate, and there's no real way to figure it out, well, how do you do it? How do you figure out how much to eat? Because if you don't know how much you're burning, none of this is going to make any sense, right? Well, there are a few ways that I figured this out. And one of the ways is by using the Harris-Benedict equation. Now, with this formula, it factors in the basal metabolic rate, which is essentially the amount of calories you burn simply by existing. If you were laying in bed, not moving a muscle, just laying there all day, 24 hours a day, that's the number of calories you'd burn for your bodily functions, breathing, blood flow, brain function. All this stuff is just what you burn at your height, your age, your weight, your gender, all of this stuff, all factored in, just what you're burning to exist. And then what it does from there is it factors in an activity level, which essentially is the stuff you do across the day, including workouts, including walking, including your job, including being with family or friends, or anything that you do across the day, chores. You factor in this activity factor. And now they typically base it on your exercise routines, which there's a lot more to it, but you can get a pretty good idea of doing with this formula to figure out how many calories you're actually burning to at least get a starting point. But what I've found is there's a couple things you have to factor in to make this even more accurate. Now, number one is what you're doing as a job. Someone who's doing a true desk job in an office is going to be vastly different from someone who works construction or works retail, or they're on their feet all day walking around or stocking shelves or whatever else, being a manager. I know all about that. So there's a lot of different things that factor into that as far as just the day job aspect. And then there's also the workout frequency. If you're working out every day after work versus if you're working out 2 to 3 times a week, that's going to make a big difference. The amount of cardio you do, how much cardio you do per session, that's going to factor in quite a bit. So what I've found is that you can kind of get a good starting point based on your step count and your workout frequency, because step count is going to kind of take into account your day job. As long as you have your phone on you or your Fitbit or your watch, you can kind of base it on that. And then your workout frequency will be based on the intensity of it and as well as the frequency of it, which the Harris-Benedict formula does factor in that at least. So when you're, let's just say, working as a retail manager and you're walking around all day, you're checking on people, you're working with customers, you're doing all this stuff all day long, probably stocking some shelves sometimes too, because people don't want to show up for work, but that's a whole different story. So there is that. And then you go ahead and work out 3 days a week. You're probably going to be in the active category because your steps are probably going to be somewhere between 6 and 10,000 steps a day, depending upon different factors, right? So if you're somewhere between 6 and 10,000 steps a day and you're working out 4 times a week, you're probably going to be active. 3 times a week, you're going to be active. However, if you work construction, you're a builder of any kind, actually doing physical labor, plus you're working out 3 to 5 times a week of moderate intensity workouts, you're probably going to be in the highly active category for this formula. And then if you're a sedentary, unemployed individual working out at home a couple times a week, not really doing a whole lot, you're going to be in that sedentary status. And then if you're somewhere in the middle, you have an office job, you work out 3-4 days a week, you're doing like 4,000 to 5,000 steps a day because you're doing a little bit of intentional cardio, then you're probably going to be in the lightly active category. Now, I probably didn't have to go into explaining all these categories that they have on there. However, it kind of gives you a good idea of where to start with. And then this is how you find the start point, though. This isn't done yet, because what you're going to have to do is you take that calorie amount. For me, right now, I was working an office job. Now I'm in between jobs at this point. But the funny thing is my step count's actually higher, but pretty low activity days, day to day. relative to what I was doing before when I was working at an auto repair shop last year. So just for the sake of example, there's that. I work out 3 days a week, work out pretty hard, but I don't work out for very long. And with that said, all factored in, I've estimated through this formula and through my own testing that I burn almost exactly 2,600 calories a day. When I eat 2,600 every single day, I don't gain weight, I don't lose weight. And this is demonstrated week after week. And what I've been doing for the last several months is eating 2,600 calories a day. And it actually did help me gain weight after my last diet for a little while. And then recently, in the last couple months, I haven't gained a pound. Like right now, my maintenance is at 2,600 calories because I have not gained a pound in 2 months. Now, with that said, it shouldn't take you several months to figure out what your maintenance is. And with maintenance calories, it does adjust a little bit based on body weight, but not a dramatic amount. So let's just say you do the formula, you get the number, whatever it might be, and then you plug it into something like MyFitnessPal or MyNetDiary or whatever the other calorie tracking apps there are out there. There's a bunch of good ones now. Wasn't the case when I first got started, but there are some good ones now. You plug it in there and you do everything in your power to eat 500 calories less than that number every single day for 2 weeks to start. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to figure out what happens with your body weight. So the best way to do this is to weigh every single morning. And the reason you want to do this is you want to get a weekly average. And the best way to do that is you weigh every day. At the end of the week, you take all 7 weigh-ins and then you average them out. You add them all together, divide them by 7, and that's going to be your average weight for the week. You do this for 2 weeks in a row and see what happens. If your weight goes up, you need to eat less. If your weight goes down, you need to, keep doing what you're doing. If you're losing more than 2 pounds, might want to add a little bit. But if your weight stays the same, you want to eat less. Now, another thing to note is that if you are doing everything in your power to be as accurate as possible, you're weighing foods, you're using measuring cups if you have to, you're being very particular with checking any nutrition information of food that you're buying at restaurants or eating out or anything like that. And if you are incredibly accurate, don't forget condiments or oils or fat, and you factor every single thing in, every sip of drink you take, every bite of food that you have, even the little bits that you take off your daughter's plate. I do that sometimes, every little bit, then you know where you can start. So that's really the long, very wordy answer to how to figure out how many calories you're burning. You can use a Fitbit. You can use an Apple Watch. And even though they're scientifically not accurate or they're sometimes just so far off, in my own experience, they've actually been very accurate. So I probably could have said that they are pretty accurate from the whole thing. But in order to get that accuracy, you do actually have to train it. You have to enter in your stats very correctly and very honestly. And you also should test based on that number. So say if it's saying you're burning 2,400 calories a day, if you want to lose weight, you eat 1,900, right? 500 less. That'll help you lose 1 pound per week on average. And that's not factoring in water weight. 1 pound of adipose tissue, body fat per week on average. If you do that perfectly and track everything, then that's how it works. Having said all that, there is no perfect way to figure it out. But the 2 ways that I talked about here do involve some testing, do involve some trial and error, and are going to take some work and dedication to figure out. However, if you do need help with the setup part of this, head over to gainswithgabe.com and join the free newsletter first. That way you can get a feel for how I do things and how I can help you. And you can also get access to the free channels of the community. And if you want more steps to getting in shape, I do offer a program, entry-level do-it-yourself type program, and then I have coaching where we work one-on-one together to get everything all set and ready to go. So the best way to start is start with the free newsletter in the community for the free channels, and all you have to do, gainswithgabe.com. Go ahead, join, and I'll see you on the inside.